If you're doing SEO, then you have to watch this video because there was just a massive leak of Google's ranking factor. So I'm gonna jump over to my computer and I'm gonna show you exactly what has been discovered. Okay, so before we dive in, just wanna make sure you know who I am. I'm Nathan Gotch, the founder of Gotch SEO Academy. This is the #1 SEO training program for agencies, and you can see we've got the whole community here. And I'm also the founder of an SEO software called Rankability. I'm the author of The SEO Entrepreneur, and I also have gotten a lot of SEO results over the last decade. But I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw that Rand Fishkin had posted about this. And basically just, I'm gonna take all of this really technical stuff and I'm gonna make it really simple. Number one, nav boost, all this kind of technical language, I'm just gonna keep it really simple. Once you're ranking, if people are not clicking on your result, that's a real problem. The good news is you can go right into Google Search Console and you can see your CTR data. That's an area where you can benchmark and try to improve. The next one is Chrome. If you're using a Google product, they are tracking everything that you're doing. So they're using all the data at their disposal to determine what should rank. Number 3 is brand and EEAT. The biggest element is your overall brand, and your overall brand is likely determined by a lot of external variables. So that's going to be backlinks, possibly could be branded searches. It could be a bunch of other signals outside of your website, right? So building a brand is really important. And that's why, I'm publishing YouTube videos. I'm not just relying on Google, right? If I only relied on Google, then that would be not super smart at all. So we should be building out kind of an omnipresent strategy around any brand that we're working with to really focus on just building a brand. Don't even think about necessarily SEO. Think about building a brand and building a presence on the websites that are most relevant to what you do, which then can drive relevant referral traffic into your website, which is going to produce the positive signals on your site, right? If we're trying to produce positive user signals on the site, we need to drive maximum relevant traffic into our website. Relevance is the name of the game. And now number 4 is, this is all about freshness. We need to really focus on having fresh assets. And the way that we do that is we set a cadence for updating and upgrading our assets, every 6 to 12 months typically. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a full rebuild. At least building some new freshness into that asset is really, really smart. Okay. That's going to make a big difference. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then content and link signals. Okay, it's no surprise that link signals are huge. And when we're talking about domain authority, this is not Moz's domain. We're talking about the overall domain strength from a link profile perspective. There's a high probability that they use this. It's pretty clear. There's been overwhelming studies and evidence that backlinks make a huge difference. Okay, so even debating it would be foolish at this point. So it's a huge, huge factor. All right, so those are kind of the core things. It's basically click data, user data, obviously content itself, your reputation and your brand, and then backlink signals. We're just going to walk through kind of some simple things that you can do to make sure that your content is built for maximum rankings. So number 1 is uniqueness. The number 1 thing you should do with your SEO content is when you pick a keyword, start to think about what is the unique angle? What's the unique thing that I can build that no one else has done? Sometimes it's a full-on, completely purple cow type of angle. Okay, so here's a quick example of a purple cow type of angle. So when I wanted to rank for this keyword, I looked at all the results and basically I saw a bunch of generic kind of list posts where people probably just went to Amazon and threw them into a list. So what I did is I actually went and I purchased all of the books in the SEO space and I actually read them and then reported on all of these books. I took pictures. Obviously this is in my kitchen. I have visual evidence. There's evidence that I actually did this because there's nuance in this post that I had to have read it to actually know it, right? So this is just a small example of a purple cow type of angle. Sometimes there are situations where you can't do this. It's just not possible. So in other ways, you can create differentiation using other techniques. Okay, so this is just one small example. Another one is best CMS for SEO. I'm winning on this one right now, of course, but I'm beating some really powerful websites. And once again, this is just based purely on uniqueness. I just did something that was a purple cow angle. Now that's not always the case. I'm not always looking for a really hard, purple cow type of angle to win. Sometimes it's a very simple angle, which is just being the most relevant page possible. So this page here is what I want to show you. This page was ranking number 50 or 60 or something, way, way horrible. And what I did, this keyword, iMovie crashes when importing. So this post was ranking for this specific phrase. and it was ranking horribly. So what I did is I wanted to rank for this. So I started to look at the results, and basically what I saw was like, okay, none of these results are really talking about the specific issue of crashes when importing. Like, it's a very specific problem that needs to be solved. So what I did is I splintered off and created a dedicated asset to solve that one problem. And then I published that new asset, and it's been ranking, number one or in the top 3 for like many, many years. Okay. And the reason, like what I did here, this is not like a particular, it's not a spectacular piece of content, but what it is it's the most relevant piece of content for this query. So what I did is, instead of finding some purple cow angle like one of these, I just basically said, well, I'm just going to build the most relevant piece of content because no one else has done that, right? So you don't need to always go to such extreme lengths. You only need to do this when it's a highly competitive keyword. But when it's not a competitive keyword, sometimes just building out the most relevant asset is the angle that you have to do. Okay, it's literally as simple as that. So there's a lot of other things you can do to build proper engagement on a page. But just so you know, this is when I'll be talking about this, but this is the first place to begin, is like, how do I create something that's different than what's currently ranking, right? Sometimes the whole angle, sometimes it's just micro pieces of that. Now we're gonna move on to number 2 here, which is freshness, right? I already talked about this, but make it a part of your routine where you're constantly trying to update your assets. Like, depending on the competition of that asset, you should be doing it probably, every 3 to 6 months, at least revisiting it and seeing how it's doing. But if it's not super competitive, you could expand that out further. But the more competition there is, the smaller the window is to keep it as fresh as possible. Okay, so highly recommend putting that into your workflow. Number 3 is fulfillment. And when I'm talking about fulfillment, I'm talking about fulfilling search intent. Okay, this is really critical. You could get uniqueness right, you could get freshness right, but if your page does not actually help the searcher, it's not going to matter, right? Because the searcher will not engage on that page. And if we can't produce good engagement on that page, then the whole system breaks down. So if we're producing positive signals on the page, that's an indication that we have fulfilled the intent properly, right? That's the key. So you can just go into Google Analytics and you can see with engagement rate, okay? And I'll be talking here in a second about engagement, but you can go and look at the engagement rate. You can see how that page is performing. We can use user tracking data like Hotjar or Mouseflow to see how users are engaging on your page. And that will help us figure out, like, have we fulfilled the intent? Okay, that's what matters. And Google is really looking at this, so do not take it lightly. Number 4 is relevance. Okay, this goes back to search intent. So these are kind of cousins when it comes to this, but we have to build out the most relevant page possible for the query. So going back to my example, which was the iMovie crashes when importing, this page, although it is partially relevant, it's not relevant to the big problem that this person has. And I can speak from experience. When I go into iMovie and I have this issue, the last thing I want is a freaking review. I don't care about a review. I need to solve my specific problem. And this page did not deserve to rank. So when I built this page, this actually deserved to rank because I'm actually solving that very specific problem. Okay, so this comes back down to relevance. Now, there's a way that you can do this. There's a smart way and a ineffective way to do this. Now, the way that I do it, it's just going to tell you in full transparency, the way that I do it is I, of course, use my own software to do this. Now, showing you this example here, this is, I was ranking number like 70 or something for SEO for dentists. Now, I don't know where I am now. We can check. Let's see, SEO for dentists. And of course, this could be personalized, so take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm let's say in the top 3, okay, over here. So I built this asset with NLP in mind, and all of these are topics that needed to be fulfilled in this content to build a properly relevant asset, okay? The big difference with Rankability compared to the other tools is that we don't care about how many times you mention a specific keyword. That does not matter. What I view these as are topics. These are topics that we have to hit in the content, okay? And that's really critical because we're trying to build the most relevant page imaginable. So if you're not using this data, you're really not, you don't have the information you need to build a highly relevant asset, okay? You can guess, you can try to piece something together with ChatGPT, but it will never be as effective as actually extracting the NLP ideas from the competitors and then making sure you're hitting on those same topics. Now, there's a nuance here. This is very important. It's not just about hitting the NLP topics. That's kind of like part one. But going back to what I mentioned before, which is going back to uniqueness, okay? Uniqueness, which is really critical, is you want to have sections in this content that have certain levels of uniqueness, meaning other people who are creating content for this keyword have not talked about this stuff, okay? So what I do is I look at my content, I say, okay, we got a lot of green, that's good. That means we're hitting on the core topics. But then what I want to see is I want to see a lot of blank spots, a lot of areas where there's no green, okay? So we got this whole block here where there's not a lot of green. That's a good thing for me, okay? So that means there's something I put in this content that's unique. And then the final piece of this is engagement. There's a few things you can do on the engagement side. You don't have to guess. Use Google Analytics 4. I published this video 8 months ago talking about GA4 engagement rate. You can integrate the Google Analytics 4 API into Screaming Frog, crawl your whole site, and then you can actually get the engagement rate for each individual page on your site. And this is just one thing that you can benchmark, and you can get an average. So what I like to do is I'll take the average engagement rate on my entire website, okay? Average engagement rate, let's say it's, 50, okay? That's my average engagement rate. Well, then any page that's below that 50% average is a page that I want to investigate further. I want to look into it. I want to see why is that engagement rate so poor on that page. And I won't get into, what produces good engagement, but there's small things. Like for example, if you look up the keyword script timer, okay, I think I rank somewhere, yeah, here. Like this page here this is not what you would think is like a long form piece of content. It's just a simple tool, a very simple tool. It fulfills the intent and it produces good user signals, right? Because what people are doing, they're actually coming in here, they're using it and they're calculating, and the stuff is happening here. And then they bookmark it and then they link to it and they share it. Like this is what it's all about. I'll drop links to all these sources below and you guys can check them out. And as always, if you like this video, please like it, subscribe, leave your comments below. Tell me what you think about these ranking factors, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.